Your journey has been an interesting one up to here. You've questioned so much more than those around you. You've even questioned yourself as to how you could have grown into these thoughts. Am I crazy? When did I begin to think differently? Why do people in general appear so limited in their thought process? Rest assured, you are not alone. The world is slowly waking up to what you already know inside, yet can't quite verbalize. Welcome to the Spiritual Dope Podcast. The show that answers the questions you never even knew to ask, but needed the answers to. Questions about you, this world, the people in it. Most importantly, how do I proceed now moving forward? We don't claim to have all the answers, but we sure do love living in the question. Time for another hit of Spiritual Dope with your host, Brandon Henley. Let's get right into today's episode.
Hey there, Spiritual Dope. I'm on here today with Chris Plourde. He is a Los Angeles-based conscious performance coach, consultant, speaker, and mind-body instructor with over 20 years of experience. Chris has traveled both nationally and internationally, speaking, educating on the physical, mental, and emotional aspects of wellness in life. He's also worked with and coached well-known companies such as Walt Disney, Equinox, YPO, that's the Young Presidents Association Organization chapters, Tender Greens, Enterprise Car Rental, Xerox, Lululemon, Worldwide Produce, and many others. Chris has mentored and consulted with celebrities, business executives, top fitness professionals, and military special ops personnel. By disrupting old patterns and identifying limiting beliefs, Chris guides his clients to achieving their goals and through the process of falling in love with the journey of becoming the greatest version of themselves. Chris, what's up? Thanks for being on here today. We've been trying to, Chris and I connected, in December. And it's hard to believe that like April is literally right around the corner, man. So thanks for your patience.
No worries. I'm glad we made it work. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, Chris, I usually like to start these off with, I know we talked about not going too woo-woo, but I start these off a little woo-woo with the whole idea that we're vessels for just kind of like, cosmic energy, right? And I heard you talking a little bit before, and like, we're really energized by being of service to others, right? And like when we're being of service to others, like something just flows through us. It just takes charge, right? So this podcast is really in service to the people that are listening. And there's a message that can only be delivered through you at this time to the audience. What's that message, Chris?
Yeah, it's just falling in love with your own journey. There's so many people that think it needs to happen from somebody else, or that magic pill is going to, appear and you're going to take it. But it's really just loving yourself, falling in love with your own unique journey, and knowing that no one else ever in existence has been on it. So just embrace it and enjoy the ride.
No, for sure. I love that. I love that imagery too, right? And the idea that it's your own journey. I know that a lot of people get crap for being quote unquote snowflakes out there, but like, let's let it be that, right? Like what's wrong with that? If you just for a moment that you're on your very own special, one of a kind, never been done before journey.
Yeah. I think that's what gets so many people stuck and that's what has programmed us from childhood on is to probably like the age of 20, 25 is we take these ideas of other people's projections, our parents, our uncles, our aunts, our mentors, and they're doing the best job they can with the tools that they have, but they give us these ideas and we embed them in our brains and say, this is what success is, this is what happiness is. And then we soon realize, well, there's a level of fulfillment that's missing, right? There's something inside me that's calling, that's bigger than me, that I choose, that I want to go through. And now how do we reformulate these habits and break those old patternings so that we can live our own, like I just said, your unique journey. And that's part of the work that we get to do in all this, which is it can be fun and challenging, but so worth it.
For sure. Well, Chris, I know you're kind of like if I had to call it something, almost like a peak performance, right? And I'm sure that like peak performance, mindset, and a bunch of other things. As far as I can tell, you got your start kind of like in the cycling space and fitness space. What led you kind of to where you are today from there?
The deeper quest for what made people tick, being in the fitness industry, there was a lot of external It was like, I want to lose 10 pounds. I want to, complete this race, and people really didn't understand the why of it and what they were doing. And I can speak for me when I was in that, and I was doing these, a cyclist and a triathlete, and doing, even in playing football in high school and college, I was doing it for the idea of what success was. And when I realized that it was just not about crossing the line, it was about the journey, the idea of going through it, of the taking the falls, of the lessons you learn along the way, of trying to make up for a lack of worthiness. Right. I was constantly proving my worth every single event I would enter. Right. And when I realized that isn't healthy, I am worthy as I am right now. I don't have to prove it over and over again. Life lightened up a lot for me. I embraced the worthiness of who I am, and stopped having to like push myself to the limit every single time to prove that I'm worth it. So.
For sure. I know you talked about some of those lessons that you learned, right? Going through that process, versus crossing finish. Getting past finish line is one thing, right? I've only done a couple of like triathlons myself, and I think the longest I did was a 50-mile one, right? Like, and getting across that finish line, that's something. Right. But I know for me, some of the lessons I learned, I was like, this is a lot harder than it looks. Right. As I'm finishing up like the last 9 miles running, and there's people that are flying by me, and like I gained like a whole new respect for some of these people and what they had to put into it. Right. So I'd love to hear some of like, what are some of the lessons that you learned, or you can tell people to look forward to through that process, versus not just getting past the finish line?
Well, I think first of all, it's I can start with working in kind of some different companies that I've worked in, thinking that I had to have a business degree and work for a variety of companies that had a great name, and I would do well in those companies, but every time I would be like, wow, there's something missing here. There's some level of fulfillment that I don't have. And then that's when I went, oh, wait, being a coach, this feels good. I can remember taking my first check for training and coaching somebody, and it felt so weird. I was like, I'm actually getting paid for this? Are you kidding me right now? I love doing this. And you can actually love something and still get paid for it. That was lesson number one. Like, you don't have to be in suffering mode in order to make a career out of something you want in life, right? Like, it can actually be fulfilling and fun. And I was brought up in that, East Coast mindset of, you got to suffer. Like, I remember, shoveling pavement, asphalt for my uncle, and then going to the gym, and then doing a 6-7 hour being a server after that. And, that was like, yeah, okay, that's satisfying. But unfortunately, I took that mentality to my career, thinking that the harder and the longer hours I worked, the more fulfilled I would be, and that, or successful I would be. And when that wasn't happening, I was like, I got to reevaluate this. I got to reevaluate how I'm doing things, because I'm just burning myself out. The other lesson was slowing down. A limiting belief I had is, if I slow down, then I'm going to lose it all. And that wasn't true. That was something I made up in my mind. So it was getting myself to slow down and understand that, hey, if you can come from a more creative standpoint, if you can come from this place of compassion, if you can come from this place of innovation in your right side of your brain, oh my God, life just becomes so much more brighter and lighter. Yeah, those are just a couple. I mean, they keep going on, and I have tons of scars to kind of prove it, but I've learned to really embrace those scars in life. I mean, one more would be really just fully accepting my parents and loving who they are for who they are. Like, I think a lot of people have issues with going, well, if I just grew up in a different household, or if I had this upbringing, or if my parents just, left me this type of money, if he didn't screw up or she didn't screw up, then I would be in a different place. And that's just not the case. When you get to a place of being able to thank your parents for doing the job that they have done with the tools that they had given to them, there's freedom in that, big time. And you get to just love them, right? And sometimes put up loving boundaries along the way. My parents are still with us. They've had their fair share, especially my dad, of kind of, going through certain trials and tribulations. Alcoholism was one of them, but really understanding that I don't have to take that on. I can love him and appreciate him for who he is, but fully just jumping into that and saying, you know what, I'm here to support you, but your choice is your choice. And thank you for all the gifts you have given me and the lessons you've given me directly and indirectly. And when that realization came to me, I was like, whoa, this is huge. So yeah, that's just a few in a nutshell.
Yeah, right. I mean, look,
big question.
Yeah, I mean, they're all super powerful, right? And I think that those are some of the things that that you'd mentioned, right? Like being a coach feels good. First of all, I'll even go all the way back to like thinking you need a business degree, or being in. I've been in some larger companies, and I'm like, well, I don't have the degrees that these people have. I probably shouldn't be here with these guys, right? Like, I mean, or do they know what they're doing?
Right.
Right. Yeah. I was like, don't tell anybody what's happened here. Right. And then, this whole idea of you got it, especially East Coast, especially the boomer society. You've got to suffer, work harder, work longer. That's just not true. Right. And you're finding that for yourself, that like you can do something you actually love that makes you feel good, that you're getting paid to do. And so that's super cool. And always, fully accepting your parents. Like, I've come across that myself as well. Like, you get to a certain point, you're like, yeah, they did everything they were supposed to do, and they could have done, with what they had. And the rest of it's kind of on me. I can keep playing victim if I want.
Yeah. Right.
Or I can take some ownership of, I don't know, my life and start like making my own steps, right? Kind of letting go of that story. So a couple of things that, you've got such a awesome repertoire, right? Like, you got all kinds of things that you're leveraging to work with your clients. And a couple of things that's sticking out to me is I'm working, I'm doing breath work right now, doing training myself and teaching some clients. So like we talked about, love to hit on the breath work and meditation, hit a little bit on the psychedelic journey work. And, I don't think that there's enough, I don't know, man talk sounds terrible, but like man talk, like in the spirituality space, like, there's the, feminism, I think is rampant, and it's awesome, totally needed. But I think men need to find themselves just as much as women do, through the journey. And find out what that means. So I don't know, man. Pick one of the three, and we'll kick it from there.
Well, they all go together. I mean, they all came to me from kind of the men's work that I was in. And you say, first of all, men need it, absolutely. Women gravitate towards it because they get to, they're talking, they have tendency, and I'm not saying that I'm not stereotyping, but they seem to have tendency to be able to talk about their feelings a lot more freely than men, right? And the unfortunate thing is, when we bury our feelings, especially our shame or guilt, that grows in power. And a lot of people don't understand how that power can really turn them upside down and disrupt who they are, their true authentic self. And the courage isn't about burying those feelings. You coming from the East Coast too, you understand, man up, suck it up, get up. Don't talk about that. Be humble. Don't talk about your wins. You're bragging if you do. That's all that is. Right? Yeah. Like, talk about what's going on, but like you just said earlier, own your emotions. There's a big difference between somebody coming to you and saying, this happened to me and why, and as opposed to, this happened to me and I want to figure out the lesson in the middle of this. And this is how I'm feeling. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling hurt. I'm feeling, like frustrated, right? There's nothing wrong with having feelings. There's everything right with having feelings. And when we can look at that and say, this is part of being human, this is part of being a man, It's part of being a woman. When we get that, then again, we start to really vibrate at a higher level, even though it can be really painful sometimes, you know. And how I,
Chris, what do you mean by, let me jump in there real quick. What do you mean by vibrate at a higher level?
So if you're feeling like down in the ditches and you're just not feeling like you want to connect to to anybody, let me give you another example, right? So that's vibrating low. Vibrating high is when you felt like you were in the flow. You feel like everything's just happening. That person happens to call and or show up, right? You get that job you wanted, just you had that amazing day, like everything's just feeling good inside you and you're creative and energetic. That's vibrating high.
Yeah.
When you're not vibrating high, that's the lower self of self.
Dragon ass.
That's what I would say with that. That's right. That's right. So burying emotions, vibrating low.
Sure.
Talking about those emotions and being able to understand those emotions, vibrating high. So for me, helping me really understand that was being able to have a team of men around me, an organization of men that really helped me understand that it's okay. Coming out here from the East Coast and not really understanding how to process emotions, how to be authentic, how to be vulnerable, right? Then that was one of the things that was really hard for me to get through. And when I understood that and I was able to seriously feel those and express those and cry about those, it was freeing, because I was such a sensitive young kid that there was a point where I thought there was something wrong with me. And I was like convinced my parents in elementary school that there was something wrong with me and that I needed to see a therapist, right? To the point where I eventually was able to put enough masks on and layer up and armor up to the point where I powered my way through high school and college. And even when I got out here part of the time, it was like nothing could disrupt me. I don't remember crying or having those emotions until, 20 years ago or so. It wasn't until I understood those. And so part of that and doing that men's work and then finding the piece of what meditation is and really committing to a practice for my own self understanding, right? That was one thing. And then being able to have to be able to teach that, and then finding breath work through teaching at a meditation studio in Santa Monica. And then when I took my first class, I was like, I got off the floor and I was like, oh my God, after breath work, what is this? I need to teach this, is the exact words out of my mouth. I need to teach this. And it was like so awesome to be able to experience that and then go through a whole program for a year and a half of teacher training, and then using that now not only with my clients but being able to take it into big organizations and see the layers get peeled off. And as you know, because you teach it to your clients too, it's a connection to self, to others, to everybody that is just so powerful and so freeing. Like some people don't even know what happened to them, but it's just like, oh my God, this is real. And how I also related to it was about journey work, psychedelic journey work. I was like, there is something so similar to breath work and journey work that I need to have access to this at all times, and I have to learn how to do it and teach it.
Right.
So,
So 100%, couldn't agree more. That was my reaction too. Like, I got up off the floor and I was like, I'm all in. And to your point, right? It's like, I can do this without having to take a substance. How powerful is that? Right. I can do this without having to take a substance and then get back into my car and drive somewhere if I want to. Like, and it's right. Like, it's pretty cool. So I love that you're doing this work with the men's group, and you're relearning kind of what your emotions are, right? You're reconnecting with your emotions that have been buried, right? They're buried in like time capsules, right? Yeah. You go out, you're like, I forgot this was here. I thought I wasn't supposed to feel this, right? I didn't know this was allowed. And that connection, that reconnection is just, it's like plugging your fingers into a light socket, right? You're like super energized. And you also talk about the whole, the liberation, right? Once you feel it, once you share it, you're no longer trying to bury it, and it's like a weight that you've been dragging along this whole time. Now that you're sharing it, you're letting it go. There's like a liberation, there's a lightness that you found. One question I would certainly have is like, how can we make sure? Like, I've got 2 young boys, right, and I try to impart this stuff with them. How do we make sure that the young men who are growing up now access this sooner rather than later? I don't, this is kind of out of the original framework here, but what are your thoughts there?
No, go as far out of the framework as you want, as you're feeling. But I literally had this conversation with my son the other. He's just turned 16. I have a daughter who's 10. Mm-hmm. And I talk about this all the time. I was like, hey guys, I'm starting therapy again. I had this conversation 2 months ago, and I'm excited about it because I get an opportunity to work on myself a little bit deeper, and here's the unfortunate thing, the stigma of what, and something my, even our parents kind of taught us is I remember going to therapy like 16 years ago and then telling my mother that, a year or so later that I went to therapy and this is what I got from it. And I remember her crying, going, what did I do wrong? And she was really upset about it. I mean, she's come full circle, after a decade and a half, where she's going now and all this, but I'm all about revisiting. You know what I mean? I'm, now my therapist, she's a Reiki instructor and she's more on the spiritual side, but I'm all about the continuous work on yourself. So I think it's modeling. I know it's modeling for your kids and sharing what you're getting from it. You know what I mean? It's not being ashamed of it. It's being able to say, this is what I'm going through. It's hard. And what do you kids need? And then we have asked both of them. And at first they were both like, no, I'm good. But then they were both like, after about a day, they were like, yeah, you know what? I think I could benefit from this. I think I could really get into this. And then I'm watching, and then another whole side to it is I'm seeing some of my son's friends go through some really tough times at home. And then we're able to witness those things and talk about this and talk about kind of the different parenting styles and what makes them feel good or what doesn't make them feel good. And then when he cries, reassuring that, dude, I'm so glad you had this cry. I'm so glad you were able to let those emotions out. That's a strong thing. It's not about going, no, you shouldn't be crying or suck it up, but there are times when I see my daughter faking the cry and I'm going to be like, hold on a second, I'm going to call you on your BS right here. But those true emotional releases are so important. And it's being able to kind of just express that and talk about it with your children big time.
Yeah. No, I love that, right? Modeling, not being ashamed of it, sharing it with them, sharing what you're actually going through, letting them know where you're at, and then that emotional release. I know that my younger son, he's a little bit more sensitive emotionally, right? Just kind of just wears it on his sleeves, right? And when he's having a good cry, right? It's like, dude, let it out, right? You got to let it out. Otherwise it gets stuck somewhere, right? I think emotions get trapped. So I appreciate that. I think that our youth definitely needs to, not be afraid to feel their emotions and understand where they're coming from, right? I think at a certain point, and this would be my take, be like, don't let your emotions control you, right? And I think that's maybe where some of the storylines got tripped up, right? Like, we see people that are older that have maybe their emotions under control as we're growing up, and we're like, oh, I'm not supposed to, emote, right? But anyways, I think that it goes a little bit sideways there. So, and then you're talking about the breath work, right?
No, you're right on though. Hold on. You just said it. Clint Eastwood had it wrong. You know what I mean? Because that's what we got brought up with, was exactly what you just said. That's what was modeled to us. That was success. That was what true happiness and the idols that we all looked up to, right? But is that what leadership should be today? So sorry for interrupting, but I was just like,
not at all, right? Look, I'm of the mind, though, right, and just for the sake of the conversation, I'm of the mind that, you know, when we see like a hyper-developed person, they're in charge of their emotions, right? They feel them, but they're in charge of them, right? And that doesn't translate to somebody in their teens or even into their mid-20s without a conversation, without communication, 100%. Right? Without the guidance. And that's where I think, again, some of that stuff just gets lost, and then it turns into, you got to shove it all down so that you can be this robot, right? But
No, you just said the conversation. You know, we slip up as parents all the time, right? There's nobody's perfect. If you were perfect, you'd be really lonely because nobody.
I've got like a 98%, Chris. Come on, I got like a 98%.
Yeah, sorry, dude. You know, you're almost there, but no,
almost there.
I'm still bored by you. but anyways, it's when we do slip up. And I get emotional or react or whatever, or I get pissed off. It's having that. The wherewithal to always go back and have exactly what you just said. Have that follow-up conversation. Have that let's integrate what just happened. Hey, dad screwed up. You know, I got emotional, I was tired, and you know, this happened and that happened. It's explaining the why of it and going, I'm going to try to do better. Or here's what you did, and this is what, you know, triggered me, and here's why I reacted the way I did. Let's talk about it. Right. Let's get it out on the table and have the ability to integrate it so that next time, right, it won't be such a hard fall. And that's it.
Yeah. No, 100%. 100%. The breath work through meditation, right? And again, like super powerful. Like you probably meditated for years, and then like, you know, you do this breath work thing. You're like, well, I think this is what meditation is supposed to do. Right. And it's just it packs such a wallop. I'd love to hear like kind of how you're taking it into like bigger organizations. I mean, seriously, what's the pitch like on that, and what's the receptivity, and then results?
Well, the enrolling part. I'll give you a story. I had a lady who came into my class, and she had some major back pain that was happening. And from there, she took the class thinking it was just going to be a light breathing class, and soon came to find out that it wasn't. A lot of release. She was, as she stated, she was crying the entire time and really went through some really hard things, realized that her dad, or didn't realize, but came to grips with that her dad got diagnosed with cancer, was holding a lot in her body. We yell in breath work, so there's a lot of that. There's a lot of crying. There's a lot of laughing sometimes too, by the way, not just that. And then she, by the end of that class, that pain had gone and released from her back. And she just felt like, what just happened? Oh my God. She came to this term of like, kind of like me, I need to teach this. She was like, I need to share these modalities with the world. And from there, she started on a venture of creating an online platform for healers and practitioners called ComNest. And so she did that, and that is active right now. She's done amazing in ball, and she had affiliation with an organization called YPO, Young Presidents Organization. And, and she's like, they have a retreat set up. They have all different things happening, but she's like, I really think you're looking for all your CEOs to come together and really get vulnerable and take off the masks and stop doing this, phony baloney of fake leadership. Let's get real. Let's get deep. And so part of what I did happened to be 2 years later, was she had me come in to this retreat in Cabo and work with all these CEOs. It wasn't just about breath work. It was about really just doing breakouts and asking some hard questions and bringing up, taking the control away from them, taking their phones immediately, just having this open dialogue where they're able to just get real with each other. And then cut to a couple hours later, the breath work, where it just lays everybody out. When you have 50 people in a room that are able to share about that experience that they just had and talk deeply, and some have a spiritual, some have a mystical, some have a physical, a couple people, their pain went away where they were holding it. And then to be bombarded and then I did a couple other secret things that were super confronting, and 98% of them loved it, and 2% of them just, I met their controller. And but all in all, it really brought them together as an organization, and really was able to get them to a space in their hearts and their souls that they weren't able to get to before, and to have the questions and the understanding of what just happened and be able to answer them the entire weekend, and then to be able to share it with their spouses the next day and do the same thing it was pretty remarkable to be able to, and so fortunate to be able to go into this type of environment and share that and to give that, and for so many transformations and understandings and realizations to happen in that time was pretty remarkable, and continues to be, because I've done it, hundreds of times. But it was just, I think it's word of mouth, and it's sharing experiences that we get to really just enroll people with. So it's about the enrollment of your own experience, which I think that's what it comes down to.
No, I love that, right? So, I mean, it's just kind of like the people that have already come through you that experience it very similar to how we both experienced it. It was like, this is so powerful. I got to go to the top of a mountain and profess my love for it, right? Type of thing. So, and then you do though, like, and then these people, they're having these experiences. You talk about being able to help someone to have a mystical, a spiritual, even like these bodily experiences where, I'm reading one, going through a book right now, I think Feel to Heal, right? Where so much trauma is trapped in the body, or like energy is trapped in the body. And like your friend did, that had that trauma release, right? In the breath work, and then coming to terms and realizing kind of where they've been holding themselves back, where they've been limiting themselves, and releasing that through the breath work. Yeah. That's so cool, man. I love that story.
Are in the tissues.
Issues are in the tissues, for sure. So tell me a little bit about, like, I guess the psychedelic journey and where that's playing its role.
Yeah. So this happened, our first experience of, and I was fortunate enough to do it with my wife, happened prior to breathwork, way prior. And that's how I was able to connect to it so deeply. And people kind of just talked about it. And it was one of those things like, oh, is this really something we want to do? I was never really into pot or any drugs growing up. Beer was my thing, right? In college.
Sure.
You had other people go through this, but we're like, okay, let's see it. And the reason it is because so many of my, the community we were in, they've been doing this work far longer than we have. And they would always talk about their experiences and what they were getting and how they were growing from it. And so we ended up doing a journey for the first time, my wife and I, and I actually did one a year prior, but it was very light. And I was like, I don't really get this. There's nothing, I don't really see anything here. And I couldn't really sell my wife on it because nothing really happened. But one of the people, the guides that I told the story to, he was like, I got you, the facilitator. And so he was a dear friend of mine. I trusted him. I went to this place. We went to this, where a bunch of people, about 20 people were. And oh my divine God, I met everything and everybody. I felt so deeply connected to the tree, to the ground, to myself, to my wife, to the people around me, the colors, the understandings, and the knowing of there is something much bigger than you here. It was a profound experience that just felt as though it wasn't just about me. It was about everything around me. And from there, it was like this endeavor of, every few months. I don't recommend this for everybody, but we were just like, we were in search of the lessons and how we could grow. And from that moment, that's when my wife and I kind of were like, we're like spiritual partners here. This isn't more than just a marriage. It was like a remarriage of spiritual partnership, where we'd go to a journey and we'd come back and it would be like weeks and weeks of talking about what we got, because it's more than just the day of that journey. It's what you get that night after it wears off. It's what you get the next morning when you get to integrate it with everyone. It's what you get the weeks following, the people you meet, the layers are just peeled off, the mask is off, and you get to meet your soul, and sometimes for the first time. And then the healing you get from it is remarkable. Like, I mean, some people would come into these journey spaces and go, I feel like I got 10 years of therapy in one night, because you're finding those energetic connections to things that you have been doing for so many years, and you're realizing those don't serve me anymore. So that is something that's been profound. It's been about 8 or 9 years for us both. And, it's just something we even started talking about with my son, just being like, look, this isn't, we're going in doing drugs. This is work. This is hard sometimes, but there's a sacredness to this. There's a setting that's getting taken care of. There are people that are taking care of us. We're taking care of people. It's a community. And know that this is more than just going to get high. This is about growth within our souls, and when we could explain that, and I think he was old enough to hear it, because, he's at the age right now where he's, there's friends experimenting, and he's had some people have some bad experiences. And so what we try to convey is, look, this is set and setting. This is sacred. This is somebody holding space for you. This isn't drugs that you're buying off the street. This is organic, real plant medicine that is here with intelligence to help you and to help us. And so that explanation of it and holding it as sacred as we do, I think, is really, really important to not only just, sharing with the people around us, but sharing with the new people that are coming in, that, be very mindful of stepping into it. Don't just get a handful of mushrooms and say, okay, we're going to do this, but do your research. Find somebody that's going to be, taking care of you.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I mean, I certainly wouldn't advise that anybody just goes and grabs a handful of mushrooms and does anything by themselves.
No way.
Not that I'm not that I should be an advisor of much, but I think that you're hitting on a few things here, right? I love that you're able to do that with your spouse. The two of you are kind of in that journey, doing that journey together and growing together. When you're talking about kind of that feeling and that sensation, and you're in it, right? The word that kind of comes to my mind is like the vivaciousness, right? Like it's like kind of like life amplified, and you're in a knowing space, right? That's just as real as anything else that you've experienced, right?
No doubt.
And
that's
so
what's hard to
I'd love
explain,
to
though, to a lot of people, is that it's real. That what you just said, it's a space that is more real than anything you have been in before. Like it's like there's a knowing and downloads that are coming through that you don't question a lot of the time. It's like, oh, I know this to be true.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, no, 100%. And I think, set and setting super important, right? Have some people there to support you, be in the right headspace, of course. I would have to ask you, like, kind of what do you do prep work for yourself before you go on these journeys with an intention to go into that? And then, what does that integration look like for you?
Oh, yeah, great question. The week or two prior to it, it's, just treating your temple, your body, just being very clean, prepping mentally. What's your intention going into this? So important to kind of look at that and go, okay, what am I trying to get out of this? Rather than just kind of sitting with it and going, okay, what's take me, so to speak, where sometimes people just want to be shown. It's a co-creation. Like I said, there's an intelligence with the medicine, and you going in with a deliberate intention is important. And sometimes that intention doesn't necessarily come while you're in the medicine that night. It comes later in the evening or the next day or whatever the case may be. But that prep work's important. Knowing the facilitator or the shaman or the guide that's going to take you through it, I think it's really important that you feel you trust that person, right? That there's a space that person gets to hold for you there, and if you don't feel as though that there's a safe container for you to do what you're going to do, it's not going to be the same experience. So it's okay to kind of have those questions and have that conversation prior to the journey itself. And then integration, right? That's what I feel is the most important part, because you're going to get lessons and you're going to get knowings and you're going to get these things that are going to come through. But if you're not saying, okay, now how can I bring this into my life? Who are the people here to teach me to integrate this into my everyday existence, everyday experience, right? Because you can do all the journeys you want. And I've seen this throughout the years. So many people go into journey to journey to journey, and then nothing in their life changes, right? The work, they also name it the work for a reason, right? What action steps are you getting in your life to make those shifts and changes so that you're much more connected, you're seeing shifts, you're going through something that is a transformation in some way, shape, or form. It's not just about doing the journey, it's about doing the work as well. So
yeah, and I love it. So I guess in a sense, right, I'm listening to you kind of talk. It's almost like an accelerant, a transformational accelerant, right? If done appropriately, I suppose, with with putting in the work, with getting the mindset, going in there with an intention, and I think that you could probably testify to this fact that, like, sometimes you go in with an intention and the medicine says, I got some other plans for you, but like you still, no matter what, you kind of come out of there with like some lessons, right?
Never regret.
And then the integration. Awesome. Yeah, that's great, man. So, and it's just really cool. So, I think what's really great about your story is that, for lack of better terminology, you're a normal guy, dude. Like you're not some hippie out in the woods just chewing on a bunch of shrooms. You're not like living out of a hippie van, selling, following the Grateful Dead, selling acid or anything like that. Like, I mean, you've got your shit together. You're doing like, regular life. You've got a life of fulfillment. You found your purpose and you're living within all of those, with what you, as far as I can tell, believe to be kind of your purpose in your life. And it's really cool to see.
Thank you. It's, I thought about being that for a minute, but realized that we're here to have a human experience, right? And to be interactive with a lot of people. And, fortunately we have friends that we do this with that, they all have kids, young kids, and they all have successful businesses. And we use this work to give us guidance, to help us connect, to help us be better versions of ourselves. And that's it. So.
No, I love it. So it's funny that you're working with these the Young Presidents Organization, and you're doing this deep work. I've actually just picked up a book called The Transcendent CEO that really talks about really the similar space that you're talking about, right? Doing this work from at a leadership level, not just the kind of the fray of the organizations, as it were. Are you seeing growth in that space? Are you seeing more acceptance of the transcendental kind of leader, leading from the heart? What are you seeing out there?
For sure. No, in the higher leadership of the world and some of these top organizations, but the hope is, yes, in some of these other corporations and organizations that we're tapping in one at a time, and that's all we can do is just say, what is leadership today? And we're going in there, speaking their language, of course, and not trying to pretend that we have it all, because they're going to be like, get out of here, turn around. This isn't for me. We're meeting them where they are, and then building that trust and being able to go, hey, are you being the best leader you can? Define what leadership is today. And like I said, I think coaching and fathering is very similar. You got to kind of walk the walk in this. And I think the new leadership is not just about throwing out commands to people, but it's first of all understanding emotional tolerance. It's understanding what is surfacing for you. Are you projecting on to your employees, right? Rather than really fully understanding your employees, and the work is about looking at yourself first and foremost. Then you can be that new version of what I think leadership is going to be in this new world. And it's happening. It sure is happening. Probably not at the rate that we were hoping it would happen, but I think if we all can, do our part and say, okay, what is the person I want to work for? Right? What is the type of leader? Be that leader without a title. Even if you're not in that top position, like understand that you are in control of the energy that goes on around you. Right? You can put boundaries up. You can meet people with empathy. You can, lead by that example of just, having a purpose rather than just going through the motions. Right? And when we can do that, when we can fully grasp that within ourselves, I mean, this is going to accelerate a lot faster than it is at this exact moment, but it's happening, and I'm happy to be a part of it in any way I can.
For sure. That's great that, kind of helping the next generation along, right? What's the line? Plant a tree that you're not going to, benefit from the shade or whatever that one is. Yeah. Right.
There you go. I love that.
Well, Chris, we're kind of at this little spot that I like to call spiritual speed dating, right? It's basically kind of like a spiritual speed dating podcast show. Like people are just tuning in to figure out like who's the next connection, right? What's the next connection to source like? So I got 1 or 2 questions for you, if you're ready. You ready?
Okay. No, but yes.
No, but yes.
Yes.
No, but yes.
No, but I will be.
All right. Spiritual Bachelor number 1. What is wisdom and how do we gain it?
Wisdom is within ourselves. We all have a deep well of wisdom through the experiences that we have been through that happened for us. How do we gain more of it is we tap into who we are. We ask, what is our purpose here? We sit with ourselves and know that we have all the answers that we need already. We just have to be willing to have the courage. We have to be ready and to go inward and have the courage to feel those feels and know that the answers and the freedom and the happiness and joy is within those that are so hard for so many.
No, it's fantastic. I've heard you say the word courage quite a bit. I'm a big fan of the word courage. When you say courage, what comes to mind?
A power that's within you, right? And a quick example of that is, so many people lead with fear. They lead with fear and scarcity and anxiety, and they make decisions based upon that. Courage is knowing that you have those feelings and emotions, but they're not driving the bus. We're working towards what we want in life is having courage, not running away from what you don't want. That's not courage. Courage is having the ability to feel the feels, to be able to be vulnerable, to be able to share your story with others, because I believe that's where healing comes from. It's looking at things and being scared, but knowing that I'm going to step through this regardless. That's courage.
I love it. Thanks, man. Appreciate that. It's always super curious. Like I said, a big fan of the word. What is your one wish for the world?
That they all own their stories, that people can see that freedom exists within themselves. And like you said at the beginning, if we can not be victimized by what has happened in our lives, if we can own what has happened in our lives, the world's going to shift in a dramatic way and raise that vibe up, their own internal
100%.
vibe. So.
100%. It's great when you can own everything there is about it, right? You own your reactions, responses. You own, well, I didn't really have to be in that scenario. Your choices. You led yourself to that space. Whether or not you want to, own it or not, that's the truth. right?
Well, I think we chose it, right? I'm sorry to interrupt.
Well, I think
dating, but
no, you're all right. So I think conscious choice, right? I think that as you and I've discovered, right, like and as you talked about in the beginning, everybody else is kind of like, you should do this, you should do that, you should do this. Your uncle says this is the way to success. I should be doing what my uncle says, right? So you're living out what everybody else's idea of success is, almost as like me. Like again, you're kind of like in default zombie, unconsciously just doing it. And what I mean is like, making that conscious choice. Once you realize how powerful that choice is, that's almost as powerful. Breath work, right? Breath work and conscious choices, like, wow. Some amazing stuff. Chris, man, so glad to have you on. Is there anything that you wanted to throw out there that we didn't touch on today that you think would benefit the audience?
I think just to capitalize on what you just said, I think is so spot on. But I think honestly, in my opinion, and not to get too woo woo, but to get woo woo, I think we chose our lives prior to even coming in here. We chose our parents. We chose our karma. We said we're going to go in and we're going to like level up, so to speak, and face those things that are going to be hard. And I think if we can look at that and go, yeah, this is why I'm here. We're all here for a purpose. Then, man, it's a fun ride to be on.
100%. Thanks again, Chris. And Chris, where can people go to find out more about you?
Just my website has it all, chrisplourde.com, and Instagram, Coach Chris Plourde. It's very simple.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for being on today.
Thanks, Brandon. Appreciate you.
Really hope you enjoyed this episode of the Spiritual Dope Podcast. Stay connected with us directly through spiritualdope.co. You can also join the discussion on Facebook, Spiritual Dope, and Instagram at spiritual_dope. If you would like to speak with us, send us an email through brandon@spiritualdope.co. And as always, thank you for cultivating your mindset and creating a better reality. This concludes the most thought-provoking part of your day. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay fully up to date. Until next time, be kind to yourself and trust your intuition.